Welcome everybody to Forever Bristol City podcast. The final score at Ashton Gate on Tuesday night. It finished City 2, West Bromwich Albion 1. What a night. I put it up there alongside Hartlepool in the playoffs in 2004, that late winner from Christian Roberts. More recently, 2017, Corey Smith's late winner against Man United. And for those old enough to remember, go back to 1986 when Steve Neville slotted in the winner as City came back to win 3-0 against Hereford in the Freight Rover, having been 2-0 down from the first leg. But the current, we're there in the playoffs, 4 points clear of seventh, although that being said, Coventry are playing Portsmouth on Wednesday night, so we don't know how that one will go. But two home wins, back-to-back, puts City very, very much in the playoffs. I'm delighted to be joined by two other Daves, Tuvey and Fevs. So we've got the three Daves today. There you go. I've said it. Guys, you first, Tuvey Dave, because Mark's not with us, and thanks, Mark, for the plug on Radio Bristol last night. Most grateful for that. Tuvey Dave, you wanted to ask me a question, you said, before we got underway.
Yeah. On the last podcast at the end, I asked you if you thought we'd make the playoffs or not, and you said no. After last night's game, do you stand by that no, or are you more changing to a yes?
I'm going to say
TikTok.
Yeah, I'm sticking with my no. Yeah,
you're sticking with what? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm back. Here we go.
Yeah,
I'm sticking with my no because then I love to be proved wrong. So there we go. Dave, what were your thoughts on the final whistle? I mean, what a game! If it had finished all square.
You're breaking up again, Dave.
We are losing you. Well, I'll answer the question because I heard it. I was feeling jealous, if I'm honest. It was one of those moments at the end of the game where being in the building is something that it lives with you for your whole life, and it made me feel incredibly homesick.
We'll talk about the goal
and conceded, at the same time, imagine that was your first game yesterday. If you walk away from that and you didn't enjoy it, football's not for you. What an incredible experience to be in the building for, is all I can say.
Yeah. My first game, Dave's, was Bristol City 1, Liverpool 0, 1978-79. So I started off on a pretty good one. The second game, we went and beat Coventry 5-0 on Boxing Day. So I had a quite an easy baptism into life as a Bristol City fan, or going to watch games. And unfortunately, for many years after, it kind of went downhill. But yeah, no, I thought it was a really good game. I thought it was two good sides. I thought, West Brom were decent as well and posed us problems, but I thought we were the better side. And we rightly deserved to win. But as I tweeted out last night, there's nothing better than nutmegging an ex-gas goalkeeper in the 96th minute of a 95th minute game. So it was quite sweet. So,
it's a good feeling, right? If I move it on to the starting lineup, what were your thoughts on McGuane coming into the side?
I didn't hear any of the pre-match stuff. Trying to get to the ground last night was an absolute nightmare, but and getting out as well. But I guess Williams was deemed not fit enough to start. Was that mentioned in the pre-match stuff?
I don't think so, but I guess it kind of makes sense. He's been easing himself back in, and I think it's worth remembering that McGuane was one of the reasons for our uptick in form earlier in the season. So he's a perfectly competent player to come in, and it suits the Earthy and Bird being more advanced together. And as a four, they were very complementary of each other yesterday.
Yeah, I certainly had no problems with that at all. He's a bit different to Williams, but he's still a bit rat-like, isn't he, as well? So yeah, and I thought he did well with the ball last night. So I had no problems with the team selection. I think probably during yesterday afternoon, I called out. I thought McCrory against Furlong might be a good battle, and that's the way it proved to be as well. It's quite physical. It's a bit like two gladiators going against each other, wasn't it, as well? So there were some good matchups in the game, but I thought we were the stronger team. Not necessarily on chances, because they had a good spell in the second half, but I thought we were rightly the winners.
I thought when it comes to McCrory, in a way, when he plays, he's the heartbeat to ruthlessness, because that matchup was one of those, it was two almost gladiators going each other, nothing given each way. And it was a lot of fun to watch, you know, and other players were feeding off of it because the whole game, it was played in the right spirit, but it had an edge to the game. You could tell there was a lot riding on it. It was intense. And
We've
that
said
was
before, Dave, haven't we, that McCrory, when he was playing right wing back and Twine was playing as the right-sided 10, that McCrory in some ways kind of helped Twine because he took the physical player away from Twine, and I think that's what he did. And I think you're right. I think other players feed off of his physicality and think, actually, you know, we're not going to get bullied. I think he's quite an important player and has proved that since he's probably come back in since his second hamstring injury. So yeah, no, he's been a good asset.
Well, yours, Mr. Potier.
You back, Dave?
Are you back, Dave? I will continue until Dave can hear us okay.
Carry on, host.
Yeah. So, first 20 minutes, what were your impressions of how we set up and how we eased ourselves into the game? Some people thought it was a chess match. Other people thought it was very engaging. How did you see the first 20 minutes?
I'm not sure cagey as such. I think it was just both teams trying to get control. I thought the game ebbed and flowed all game, really. I think there were times when, you know, West Brom had a little spell on the ball and then we'd have a little spell on the ball. And yeah, I think it was just teams, you know, trying to find where they could create those little advantages against each other. But I thought it was a pretty enthralling game. You know, if you were a neutral watching that, I think you'd have enjoyed it as well. Once again, I said before, the Blackburn game was at end of January, felt a bit like that. Two good teams playing decently up against each other and trying to, you know, work each other out and trying to, you know, come to the fore. And I thought that was the game. It was quite a similar game yesterday. I thought they had a little bit more quality, although, you know, if we want to talk a little bit about there, so I thought they really missed out by playing Isaac Davis as a false nine and then playing Adam Armstrong on the right hand side. They were far better in the second half when they pushed Armstrong down the middle and pushed Davis into a kind of inside right position, and he started to find a few pockets as well. But no, I thought it was two good teams going at each other. I think we look a good side. We look a very different side to what we did pre-Christmas. That's all I'll say.
Well, that was
what do you put that down to? Sorry, guys. What do you put that down to, Dave? I'm back in the room. Apologies for it's just shows me my bad for sort of bragging about, you know, getting a free plug from Mark Tovey on the radio, and Mr. Matt Withers said get those sound problems sorted, and obviously we've had them. What do you think the difference is, Dave? What's happened? Because you were praising Manning on the forum, I noticed overnight reading that.
I think lots of different things adding up. I think, you know, I've probably posted this as well. Competition for places. So we've managed to get players back fit. You know, we're probably a little bit unbalanced in some places, but generally we've had a match day squad of 20 that's capable. And I think, you know, competition breeds good performances because you want to keep your place. I think a little bit of difference in intent. Dave and myself have talked a little bit about the way we play the back three system and the 2 10s has probably contributed us to being able to play through the middle of the pitch. And I think that's probably my biggest thing is in attack, we've been able to play through the middle of the pitch, and playing through the middle of the pitch is more dangerous than playing in our, horseshoe of safety. And then I think the other thing is by virtue of, you know, playing through the middle of the pitch, we have numbers in the middle of the pitch, which also makes us quite condensed defensively as well. Our 2 midfielders and our 3 forwards, they quite often form a bit of a pentagon. And that seems to be the stability that says no one can get into the pentagon. Burnley were the team that actually did it, but no one else has seemed to be able to penetrate that. And I think that's been a key reason.
Something I enjoyed yesterday, and it's been a gradual progression to it, is the element of risk that was being added to the football. There were flicks, there were dummies, there were turns, and those kind of things. You know, they have risk. You're probably going to lose the ball, but done in the right places, they don't hurt you. And a number of times in the first half, maybe it didn't quite come off or it wasn't quite there, but you could see what the intent was, and it wasn't a hold it, let's see what's available. It was seeing what's happening in real time. And they were difficult to pull off, but because the intensity is there, later in the game, you get your rewards because you're constantly asking questions. So the first real chance came to West Brom. There was a header towards the middle of the game, the middle of the first half. how did you see West Brom in terms of how they were challenging us? What questions did you see them asking us?
I think there were, as I say, the game ebbed and flowed, and I think you're referring to the Carl Bartley chance, the header, which he kind of just looped straight at Max. Yeah. And about 30 seconds, maybe a minute before that, they'd managed to get Swift free and then create a bit of an overload down our right hand side, and Styles got forward, and effectively the same thing happened again 30 seconds later, and they created a chance. It was always a difficult one to be able to get. He got a looping header back off one of his players, and it was always going to be difficult to try and score from that. In fact, he'd probably be better trying to keep the move going. But yeah, I think that was just one of those periods where they'd managed to find their little pockets of space and sort out that advantage. And in other parts of the game, we did the same back to them. So yeah, just the way the game ebbed and flowed, I think.
And it was curious because that 35 minutes, like you said, there was an ebb and flow, and then all of a sudden things started happening in quick order. First of all, you have the Max error, shall we say? Do you think he's learned enough to be making that kind of mistake in such a high-profile game? Why are we reverting back to that type when we've come so far away from it? What do you think it is going through his mind to make him do that in that moment?
I think it's that slight hesitation in decision making. That's for me predominantly is his biggest issue. I think he's a very solid championship goalkeeper, but I think he's got that odd moment where the game happens a little bit quick, or opposition players are a little bit smarter up there than he is, and that catches him out. And I've probably said that ever since he's made his debut, really. When sometimes his distribution's been bad because he thought a pass was on, he's then gone to execute it, and the pass is no longer on because he hasn't seen what's happening around it. So I think it's that. I think we'll probably talk about the goal a little bit later. I think there was that little hesitation there as well, and that's what cost us. Thankfully in the first half that didn't cost us. It was a lovely back pass from their player to Max, having it straight at him. But yeah, I think most of us sit in the ground think, oh, he's just going to go and clear this first time, and when he doesn't, you think, yeah.
I think that's the thing, is that even in the last few games, he's been more than decent. He's performed well. It's just every now and again he has one of those where he becomes the conversation, and it can feel harsh, but it's like, oh, Max, not again, please. And it may have contributed to what comes later in a way.
Yeah, I think when you say it's harsh, I think it is. But are we striving to be a playoff club and a Premier League club or not? I think there's still quite a lot of fans who are like, oh, we can't be horrible. We can't do, we need to get rid of that kind of thinking, and both on the players and in the crowd as well. And think if we're going to do something, we've got to be ruthless. And
exactly.
Maybe we'll see that ruthlessness in the summer. I don't know.
No. Now onto the first big chance of the game. The ball kind of goes through to, I think it was Urfi, and the keeper makes a sharp save to push it away. It comes to Wales. In your opinion, is it a slightly poor finish, or is it a very good save?
Very good save. First time strike from Naki, struck it really well. It's arrowing into the near post, and Griffiths has got up and got a really good strong hand on it. It might have been Sykes went through, actually. I'm not sure.
Okay, Sykes. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But yeah, no. You lash that from Naki, and you hope you probably could have done with scuffing it back to the far post, really, and the keeper would have been committed. But no, good save.
I think it was curious because in that moment you could feel like a momentum kind of building, pushing them, and you could see they were under a bit of stress. And it was curious because for the first time after that, we had an opportunity where I think it was Sykes gets down. No, it's Wells that gets down the byline on a half turn, and he crosses it into McCrory in the back post. And after just scoring, do you think he hit it too well? You can almost make an argument that if he'd scuffed it, hit it off the floor, not quite connected, it goes anywhere but there.
Yeah, I didn't know if the keeper had saved or whether a defender blocked it or not. I wasn't sure. But yeah, no, he connected with it really well, didn't he? And I think you talked about kind of Wells getting across. And I thought Wells' movement last night was a joy to watch. And he didn't go out wide too often, but he just kind of bent those little runs around the outside of Bartley or Holgate and just caused them problems. And I think. There's a lot of talk in there about, you've got to have a big number 9. I think I go back to the days of Neville and Riley where we played two little ones, really, but they were two little pests, weren't they? And I guess, some of my football philosophy, if I've got such a thing, is kind of based on, if you've got quick players with good movement, I think they can do whatever a big striker can do. But you also have to have, service as well.
Exactly. And if you take the 4-3 combination of Wells, Earthy and Bird, you wouldn't necessarily say they've got bags of pace. But what is it that makes them so effective as a 3, do you think?
I think it's two things. If we talk about Earthy, first of all, when he first came into the side at the start of the season, I said he's going to be a bit like Jeffrey Boycott. Once he gets in, you won't get him out of the team. And it didn't happen, in fairness. He'd probably been a bit disappointing. But the way he's playing at the moment, and I think some of it goes off the back of, scoring a couple of goals against Middlesbrough, which proved to be hugely decisive, has given him the confidence. But the one thing I like about him, he does everything with purpose. When he drops into that pocket, he doesn't amble into that so that he can be marked. He sprints into it. And then hence why he's always got 10 yards to be able to control, turn and face up. So I think that's a big part of it. I think Bird on the other side, being left-footed, where he offers that slight kind of deviation to Twine, it's when the ball comes into him and he's able to come in the half turn and come inside. So I talked earlier a little bit about being able to penetrate through the centre of the pitch. That's what Bird gives us, that ability to come inside and then look to open out from there. And I think that's a big reason why we don't get stifled in having to go down the sides, back, across, down the other side, etc. Because Bird can come inside off that left foot. I guess I don't mind saying I thought Bird would be a much more effective playing in central midfield and distributing to our front players. But I think in this particular system, he really suits. I think if we were still playing 4-2-3-1, I think I'd rather have him in the central midfield part. So I think that's the two things. I think he just got a very clever striker in Nahki Wells, who, he's still fit as a fiddle, isn't he? And what he's probably done is he's probably improved his games over the last 3 years. I think those first 2 years as a City, or 2.5 years as a City player, were probably a bit underwhelming. But I think most people look at him now and think, yeah, he's a top player. He's the player I always wanted, 10 years ago, but we were never in the position.
I don't know if you guys can hear me now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys can hear me now, but Manning said after the game, Nahki was speaking to the players in the dressing room, addressing the players in the dressing room as a senior pro. And as people were saying on Radio Bristol last night, well, at least one, they got to do something about his contract, because, if Manning's commenting about him lifting the players, speaking as a senior pro, he's got to have some value around the club, hasn't he? I mean, do you think he will be kept on, Dave Fevs?
Yeah, undoubtedly, unless he doesn't want to, and I don't think that's the case. I read stuff around, if he's willing to take a pay cut. My view is he's already taken his pay cut, and for me, he's earning every penny of his current wage and some. Why would you want him to take another pay cut? I think that the bigger debate is how long are you willing to give him a contract for? Obviously, you've got to give him a year. Whether he'll sign without it being 2 years, or whether you could persuade him to do 1 year plus, a trigger based on appearances or goals or something like that for a second year. I don't know, but I think the continuity factor is going to be really important for us. And I think he's, without him this season, I think we'd be looking at a very different situation. He's bailed us out. He's bailed recruitment out in a number of ways.
Put it this way: the goal that he scored yesterday, which we'll come to later, was not a goal of an aging striker. It was a goal of a striker on top of his game. Creates the space, makes the space, and hits it. It's an instinctive striker's finish. And would you rather go a season too early or a season too late with Wells? And I'm in the camp of you keep him, because it's better to go a season too many, but you need recruitment coming through, or you have to seriously believe that Armstrong's going to make that step up. I would keep him, but this next striker signing that we make is absolutely crucial in terms of progression.
No, that's a big one.
Mark Scammel's comments there as well. They kind of similar feeling to me, and I thought that we were always the wrong time to sign Nahki Wells, and when we got him, it did feel exactly like you say, Mark, that we we'd almost kind of got him at the end of his career, and it wasn't right. But he's proved brilliant, and I do think that, you know, probably not the player that most fans like us to talk about, but that partnership with Tommy Conway at the start of 22-23 is probably the thing that rejuvenated Naki, and it certainly his time here. I think that was massively important. He got a partnership and felt like he was part of Bristol City, and it's gone, you know, from strength to strength since then.
Mr. Potier, all yours.
No, you can't. I mean, Dave, as somebody said on there, Dave P, out of a job. You've done a great job there, and you know, I was going to say you might as well keep it going, but I know we're all a little bit pressed for time. But I don't know what was going on there with the connection, but hopefully it doesn't sound too bad. I think the thing to go is keep going, keep on going. If I shut up, which some people would say is a good thing. I mean, I think you've done the first half, Dave.
Yeah.
I think you've done the first half. Let's get into the second half. Let's talk about the goal. It came. I mean, we were playing some absolutely superb football for long period. We should have gone in at half time, at least a goal ahead, were it not for the saves you've talked about with Griffiths. But take us through the goal, Dave, as you saw it. You know, I mean, it was Pring. You know, he'd set something up for Earthy a little bit beforehand, and Earthy had gone wide. But Pring sets it up. Wells rolling back the years. I think you may have already said that. But
there's something that I think is worth addressing, in that through parts of the season, one of our weakest periods has been just after half time.
Yeah.
And yesterday, for the first 5 minutes of the second half, I felt we were flat. We were lacking a bit of energy. We hadn't come out necessarily all guns blazing. Half time did us no favors. But after that first 5 minutes, it was a rebound. It was, no, we are not going to stand for this, and we are going to push them back. And then within that area, and I think it started with Pring stealing one, but it was started from a higher press being backed up from the defenders. And then from there, you kind of gain that energy, you gain that momentum. What was interesting about the goal itself, I believe it's a Macquarie left-footed assist with the outside of the foot, no doubt, but it is made by Wells in understanding where the space is and how to access it. And what he does is literally... Was it Pring? Was it? Oh, yeah. Don't ruin my moment. I was really happy with myself. I thought it was Macquarie. Okay, I stand completely corrected. But Wells makes it. He creates the space, and it's something that as soon as he gets it, he understands the spinning ball and just tucks it around the keeper like it was nothing. It's an incredible finish, but it's a fantastic one.
Yeah.
Well and truly in the lead.
That start of the second half, we were probably adjusting to the fact that they'd switched Davis and Armstrong around, and just gave us a slightly different set of problems, and we kind of got our heads around that. I guess my view of the goal was that, you know, Naki's probably in the dressing room afterwards saying, you know, goalposts don't move, boys. You know, I know where they are. I know where the corners are. And, you know, as soon as he'd rolled Holgate, he was going to take the shot on, and, you know, what a brilliant goal. And, you know, off the top of my head, I can't think of too many Naki Wells goals better than that, to be perfectly honest.
No, it's three and four. Finish. 3 and 4 for him now, yeah. And that was a right foot last night, a left foot, I think, on Saturday, and I can't remember what the previous one was. But
he's scoring it better than a goal every other game, Dave, at the moment in terms of his minutes, which is, you know, going back to the contract talks. You know, that's a hell of an effort.
And he was meant to be fourth choice striker, wasn't he, this season? Basically,
certainly third choice, wasn't he? So
the third choice, yeah. And Harry Cornick, well, I don't know what's happened to him now. We did name a full bench last night. I thought the period after we scored the goal, we were playing champagne football. I mean, we were dominant, in a way that we've not seen for very many years. It was flowing, it was great. But let's move on to that lead. Lasted only 6 minutes. Who's at fault? Tubby Dave, for the goal. Is anybody at fault? Misunderstandings happen. What were your thoughts?
It is a miscommunication, or it is a lack of trust. I'm inclined to say they are both at fault for different parts. I don't necessarily think O'Leary's positioning is great. I'm going to assume there is a call, and it looks to me like Pring, his intention and in his mind, wants to head it back to O'Leary, but because O'Leary's come, he probably thinks the attacker is closer and doesn't think that O'Leary is going to get there. And he makes a terrible decision. But in a way, this is a build-up of other poor decisions in the past getting to you. You know, there have been other moments like that where there's been a miscommunication. So he's tried to take it into his own hands, which is sometimes what you say a defender should do, if you don't think your keeper's getting there, you make your own decision, but it leads to a catastrophe. I wouldn't necessarily say one of them is to blame. I would personally say they both are, because ultimately sometimes when you mention the word communication, you need two people to communicate. So I would actually go for both.
Okay, Dave, Fevs.
I probably broadly agree with that, Dave. But the only thing I want my keeper to do where there's indecision is to take everyone out. And I guess in some ways it was a bit reminiscent of Maradona and Shilton, wasn't it? Apart from Pring used his head. Max hasn't got there, and that's because he hesitates once, he hesitates twice, and by the time he's coming, he's actually too far away to go and punch the ball. So I probably err more on the side of it being Max's fault, but it's a team cock, or a pair of players cock up if nothing, But yeah, it's bloody frustrating because, as you say, Dave, I think after the goal we were on top. Just shows how kind of transient sometimes these things are, and it only takes one mistake, and the whole game changed on that as well.
It did. Well, it changed, and you felt us visibly deflated. Then West Brom made that quadruple substitution, and there was some mean-looking players came on in that. West Brom were well and truly in command. Tubby Dave, in years gone by, we might have wilted under that pressure, don't you think?
They were in command. We could barely put two passes together. The balloon had been popped. That kind of thing will happen to a goal like that. It sucks the energy out of you. It sucks the life out of you. And actually, I felt that while it looked as you're watching it like it was going downhill, actually they didn't create too many chances in that period. There's one later with Armstrong after we've had the Wales opportunity. But what did they really create in that moment? Nothing, because when it's not going for you, sometimes you have to stand firm. You have to sit in the trenches and say, okay, it's not going for us, but you're not going to score. And we did that very well. Very, very well.
Dave, your thoughts?
I thought we...
Yeah.
I think McGuane having, barely played and, having played on Saturday and it came, I think whether the goal sucked the life out of him and the team, but all of a sudden he'd lost his effectiveness. So we were slightly getting overrun a little bit in midfield. And I thought, can't believe I'm saying this, Jason Knight wasn't in the game for that 10-minute period.
I have to agree. Yeah, I agree.
I remember he got on the ball kind of round about the 80th minute. I'm thinking that's the first time I've seen him round the ball for 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. And I think they just overrun us for a little bit. They managed to get Fellows in a couple of times. I can't remember when Dyke had the chance at the near post and the pullback, but that
70
that
minutes,
was kind of
70 minutes,
their big chance, wasn't it? And luckily it's straight at Max. But we that and I guess that was just the nature of it being a good game. Is that West Brom probably smelled blood. They looked out of it on 63 minutes, didn't they, or 61 minutes, whatever it was, and then all of a sudden we've given them a goal in there, and they're back in it, and that's the championship. But I think you're right, Dave. I think we did stand up to them pretty well, but it was a bit ominous as well, wasn't it?
It was very dogged in that 25-minute period, because genuinely speaking, nothing was happening. The energy had gone, and I think a few legs had gone after two big games. The subs were needed. What I found interesting in that period about the subs is they didn't actually go for the 60th minute, and it proves that those 60th minute subs earlier in the season were a bit of a myth. It was more of a reaction to what was needed, and the players stood up to task, and the subs, when they came on, it felt like this is the right time for subs. And for me, this was
20 minutes it is to go, 75 plus typically 5 added on. What did you think?
Just go back on that, Dave. Just on the subs. I think my view of the subs wasn't necessarily the timing of them. It was more the predictable nature of who was coming on for who, and not necessarily thinking about. There were times where you bring Armstrong on for Wales, and you think actually maybe Cornet would be the better option here because we need somebody who's going to press, and we didn't do that. It was more of that predictable nature of it that frustrated me rather than the timing per se. And obviously the ball has to go out of play as well to make it on 60 minutes, doesn't it, as well?
We talk about our subs. Well, I think we have done really, because it was very much like for like 75 minutes rather than 60. Something that somebody's brought up here on the text feed, which we haven't spoken about. Matt Donohue's performance as referee and the 2 penalty appeals. Dave, Tubby, your thoughts on the ref and those 2 penalties that didn't get given, or weren't they penalties?
I thought the ref got both decisions right, to be honest with you. The one on Wells, I saw it as a shoulder to shoulder. The defender did very well to get his body in that position. And for the second one, the issue is that players have to stop looking for penalties. We are going to get a reputation for not just for Twine, but for the whole team. Tanner is literally falling to the floor before he's anywhere near. It's telegraphed and it's obvious, and players need to stop doing that. You know, if I was the referee in either of those, I wouldn't be given a penalty. So I think he got them both right.
Dave, agree? Fevs?
Yeah, I guess admittedly, I couldn't remember the first one until someone mentioned in the chat that it was Wells. No, absolutely not a penalty. I think it was a slightly misplaced pass that lost the opportunity rather than, you know, I think Wells is trying to see if he can get one, which is fine in that sense. I think Tanner, why he just doesn't go on? You know, actually stride forward with the ball. It doesn't need to fall over. Go and create the chance. I think it's too, as you say, Dave, too easy to try and fall over and get a penalty. And I don't think you were going to get it. I thought the ref was okay last night. I think he got the
I
stuff
thought
right. I think he was a bit inconsistent with some of the other stuff, but yeah.
The lino in front
of the result, I'm happy with. So
he didn't. The lino in front of Dolman let us get away with one offside, and he seemed intent on putting it right. That was in the first half.
Yeah, the Wells one, and then again, Crawl.
He had a bit of a nightmare. I like Darm's comment on the text feed aimed at you, Fevs. It says, Fevs, Cornick couldn't press his own shirt way out of his depth in this Lions Den game. I didn't know the game was played at Millwall last night with that comment.
Nor me. Cornick can't press. I think people are mistaken by Cornick's slightly unaesthetic way of running, but he's a pest.
Yeah. Remember how Brett Pittman used to run? He had a slightly unaesthetic way of running as well. You remember him?
Yeah, he could finish though.
Back in the day. Look, Max has had his critics, and by the time these 2 incidents happened, who is it? George Tanner. Wasn't it great to see him back on the bench? Yeah, because that's like having a first team regular back in contention again. But Max did 2 fine saves from Dyke, DK, and Malumbi. Dave Tubby. 2 good saves from Max, showing what he's good at. You know, so he kept us in the game at that point, didn't he?
You know, I don't want to dwell on Max for too long, but yesterday in a way was a microcosm of his season. Like, he made some good saves. He does what he's supposed to, like what he. I mean, I would call them both good but should saves. You wouldn't want to be conceding them, but at the same time, as a keeper, you've got to save them. But the issue comes that there are just too many errors creeping in, too many conversations of should he be doing better. But yeah, I think overall he actually did have a decent game yesterday. It was just he was found a little bit wanting a couple of times. I think the second save, the one where he has to scramble across the box, if I remember it correctly, is the better of the 2 saves, because I think one of them was more hit at him. But I must admit, I'm struggling to remember the.
Yeah, Dyke got the pull back and hit it straight at Max, which you know. Yeah, he's in the right place, so let's give him credit for that. The header from, was it Molumby, I think?
Molumby
was not a particularly strong header, but as you say, Max had to kind of scramble across and dive and keep it out. You know, I think he'd be disappointed if he was beaten by that. If I'm being honest, but you know, he's there. He's got to make the saves, and he did. So you know, well done, Max, for that.
Clock's running down. I'm sitting there myself thinking, I'll be happy with a point, 4 points from the 2 home games. And then we have one of their players down on the floor, injured. Diakite, how do you pronounce that one? Was it him? Diakite, the West player down. Wouldn't get up. Referee knew it wasn't a head injury. So whilst the player might have been feigning injury, maybe he could have made it even worse by clasping his head. Play continues, good that City did that and didn't boot it into touch. So nice bit of sportsmanship of the Black Arts there from ourselves. And then the red card, Malumbi getting himself sent off for, a clash with Williams. How did you see that sending off, Dave? You were watching it on, Dave Tubby, you were watching it on TV, maybe have the action replay to see what happened there.
The first thing is it's very nice to see some, shall we say, shithousery, not putting it out of play and being so nice. And I wish more teams would do that, because maybe there would be less of these nonsensical injuries where a guy's down and doesn't need to be. And playing on rattled them. They expected us just to put it out, and they didn't have any shape or anything like that. And their player goes to make the tackle basically just to try and get a stoppage to get back to 11 men. Personally, I don't think it is a sending off. I don't think the contact is sufficient, nor the intent. There isn't really a tackle there. I can understand what the ref may have thinks that he saw, but I don't think it's a red card. But having said that, that is created from us understanding that their player is playing nonsense and being ruthless and not trying to be all nice about it and saying, okay, you want to lie on the floor? We're going to try and score a goal. And in a way, they got what they deserved, West Brom, for that kind of action, because it was totally unnecessary.
Fevs, do you concur with Tubby's view?
I thought it was a red. In fairness, I thought, I think first of all, go back to the ball went quite near to Diakite, and I thought he's going to get up now, and he didn't. And I thought, oh, okay, fair play. He's genuinely injured.
I remember that.
And I thought we might put the ball out. I'm glad we didn't, because the rules say we don't have to. It's only for head injuries. The ref played on. We played on, and then I thought, I think if you watch, I don't know which leg it is of Mollenby, but I think he's tried to do Joe Williams around the back of the calf and also kind of bundle him over. I thought it was a bit of an assault. It wasn't hugely terrible, but I thought the intent was there to injure him. More than just barge him off the ball. And I thought it was, I think it deserved a red card. I think it was a stupid thing to do, and it cost them. So good. And Mollenby, I don't know what's happened to him, because I remember him being at Millwall on loan from Brighton years ago, and I thought, oh, he's a good ball player. He closes down well, but he's just become an absolute idiot. I don't know where it's come from. In pre-season he got sent off for punching someone, didn't he? And got a 6-game friendly ban. He's always, I guess he's a bit like one who's like Ben Pearson characters, and he's always annoying. He's the opposition player that really annoys you. And I said pre-game, I think we should try and wind him up. I don't think we did, but ultimately he got himself red carded and he lost them the game, which was great.
So 5 minutes of time added on, which felt about right. The crowd are saying, bang it in the box, bang it in the box. But we were playing patient football. And then Dave Tubby, go on.
I disagree with you. I don't think it was patient football. And I don't mean that as a negative in any way, because if you look at the whole game of 10 men for what felt like eternity, when you have the mindset of patient football, often you go somewhere. I would call yesterday rapid football, but with calm heads. There was clarity in what they were trying to do. And for West Brom, it was hands on deck, because they never had an opportunity to reset. We were probing, looking for holes, looking for gaps, crosses going in. But I wouldn't say it was patient. I would say it was constantly looking for an opportunity.
Dave, do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm
probing, but patient. I mean, we were camped on the edge of their box. They couldn't clear it. That was the key thing there, wasn't it?
I think what's frustrating as a fan when you look at it and you think time's running out is you want to put the ball in the box, because typically that's where goals are scored from. And you take a short corner and it ends up getting cleared, and you think, actually we just wasted the opportunity to put the ball in the box. But we fashioned pressure by playing the way we were. So it wasn't like we played a short corner and then they'd had a spell of possession and the game petered out. All they were doing was clearing it back for us to have another wave. So I'm probably with Dave. I think as a football fan, I want the ball in the box, but I can sit there and say, yeah, okay, I can see the method of this as well.
And we didn't sit back. Sorry, Dave. We didn't sit back containing and being happy for a point. We were going for it. And Dave Fevs, take us through the goal. So it came sort of from a corner and from the most unlikely of sources. Even the player that providing the assist. So I'm guessing Dickey was still up because it was a corner that we'd had. How did you see the goal?
Yeah, well, I think it's quite funny, isn't it, really? You've got right-sided centre-back. I think the ball got cleared out by Bartley, I think, and Dickey, our centre-back, heads it to our other centre-back, Viner, who cushions a volley pass back to him. Sorry, I sound like I'm doing a Mark Tuvey description of the goal now. And then, what Dickey does, I thought Dickey's going to stride onto this and try and get a shot, but he just played a really clever pass to Roberts. Robert's second touch is what makes the goal, because it takes him away from the challenge of Bartley. Without that second touch onto his left foot, he gets snuffed out. And then, hilarious, really, that the ball's kind of just gone through the legs of Griffiths, really, because it wasn't a particularly strong shot. But, you take it every day of the week, don't you?
Pandemonium. I didn't see Liam swinging a ball boy around like Lee Johnson did with that kid in 2017. But it was a hell of a noise when it went in. I bet you could have heard that all over South Bristol.
Hear it in Madrid, Dave, couldn't you?
Oh yeah.
Dave, how did you see it? I know you it's nothing like being there, as they say, but how did you see it?
Calm heads in chaos. You have essentially Robert staying up on the right hand side. You have Dickey winning possession and the assist, and he played a huge part in the goal. And ultimately, when you look at that type of goal, and it's your two centre backs and your left wing back, whose best position is left centre back, contributing to the goal, you're doing something right. And I'm of the opinion that, it's not the best from their goalkeeper, who had a pretty good game, but for that, and he'll probably be very disappointed. But sometimes you make your own luck. You get yourself into a position to hit a shot, and goalkeepers don't save everything all the time. And on reflection of the whole game, it was deserved. I think we deserved to win that game.
We did.
Over 90 minutes, we were the better side.
Yeah. And as say, Griffiths, he let one go through his legs, but in the first half, if he hadn't been on his mettle, we'd have had quite an unassailable. Well, nothing's unassailable under 3 with City, but we'd have been in a very strong position. I want to put a shout out for Zach Viner last night. Somebody's put that in the text feed as well. I don't think he put a foot wrong all last night. And Zach's had his critics sometimes with his sometimes misdirected passes out of defence when he tries to play long. How did you view?
Who they asked then? Oh, sorry.
You can go, Febs. You can go first.
I thought you had a really solid game. I think he's composed enough on the ball. I think what would get him from him is Sykes at right wing back gives him good angles, or certainly when we're playing against a team set up playing 4-2-3-1. I think depending on how their left-sided midfielder winger plays dictates on where the space is, whether it's down the outside or through the middle. And I think I've said before earlier on today that the ability to play a ball straight through the pitch into Bird on the half turn onto his left foot is kind of making Zach's life a little bit easier in terms of what the option is. I think if you go back to Burnley and look at the options of Armstrong, for example, that it was just too easy for us to try and knock a long ball into the channel, and I think that makes Zach look bad. And I think whenever we talk about Viner, I think we have to look at who are the players around him giving him passing options. And I think when those players are giving him good passing options, Zach Viner's going to look a good player. Otherwise, he's just going to hunt ball down a channel and turn it over and look a bad player. So I'm not sure whether that makes kind of Zach responsible for his own game or not. But he had a good game last night.
So,
Dave, agreed?
Well, I have a question for you, Fez, based on what you've just said. Like, when Twine is fully fit, do you think he goes back into the starting 11 as the main 10, shall we say? Or has he kind of lost possession of that shirt right now?
He is the enigma, isn't he? I think my belief is I'd rather have a team of players, if that makes sense, rather than and don't take this as just me trying to accentuate my opinion, rather than a set piece player. I think we look better as a team, more consistent as a team with playing someone like Bird there. But that's not to say Twine won't come in. He might have to up his game. I think if we look at early on the season, I don't think Twine worked hard enough. And then I think since Christmas he has. But I think when I see a kind of, I think we need a player to make a difference in our team. I want that player to be the difference on the ball in open play, not just from free kicks. And I think that's my bugbear. And people say, "Oh, you got it in for Twine." Well, I've been watching him since he was at Newport on loan, and he's always a player I've wanted, a bit like we talked about Naki Wells. And I think the reality of getting Twine playing for us is probably not quite the thought it was. And people will love his free kicks, and he's probably the best free kick taker we've ever had. But I think he's got limitations in the game. And that's why, he's probably not playing for Burnley.
Go on.
When you talk about combinations in number 10s, ultimately Mehmeti scored a lot of goals for us this season. Twine being the most expensive signing. At the beginning of the season, they were pretty much when we moved to this formation, they were the premier number 10s. Right now, for me, it's Bird and Murphy. They look so good together, and whether it's Williams or McGuane behind with Knight, they're highly complementary. And if you look at the last 3 home games, I accept Burnley away, that happens. But the last 3 home games, the energy, intensity, press, and dynamism when attacking has been refreshing to see and enjoyable. In my opinion, this is the side as much as possible, unless somebody's not fit. McGuane, Williams, I guess Williams probably is slightly ahead, but that is the core number 10s. And I would go with Wales.
I agree. I think it's the intensity, and whether you could see... It's the intensity that we don't have with Twine. And I just wonder whether Twine could play it as the backup. If Naki is the certain starter, that Dave Fevs, could Twine play in that roving striker role and be more, because it's all about getting your best players on the pitch sometimes, yeah? Is there some way we could get Twine on the pitch without dropping any of that midfield 4 that have sort of come together so well?
I'd probably go against that and say it's not about getting the best players on the pitch. It's about getting the best players for the way you want to play on the pitch. And if that's Twine, then fantastic. If it's not, I don't know about him playing as a centre forward. When he played at MK Dons, he played really, really advanced, but he played in a team that absolutely dominated possession, so he didn't need to get involved in it. Bristol City aren't that side. I think Bristol City need their striker to be involved, even if it's just making runs to take other players away and create space rather than receiving passes.
And MK
I'd be doubtful, but who knows?
And MK Dons are a lower level. Let's look forward to the weekend. Before we do that, there was a story running last night, and it's factual because there's printouts of stuff at Company's House. I'm going to ask you, Dave Fevs, what should we read into the fact that based on Company's House shareholdings, Steve and Maggie Lansdowne no longer have, in inverted commas, it is a phrase used at Company's House, significant control. Is there anything we should be reading into that? I don't want to do a long debate on it, but is there anything we should be reading?
I think if we read the letter of the law, or not letter of the law, the note that came out from Dan Carter from the Post last night, this is a change in Company House reporting rules around PSC's people or persons of significant control, and especially where that significant, or in fact the rule is around where significant control is from companies or people overseas. And obviously Guernsey's counted, or Pooler, I'm not even sure where Pooler's registered. I'm assuming Pooler's registered in Guernsey, not that you'll ever find anything on their equivalent of Company's House other than the actual name. But so I think it's just a paperwork exercise. I think, there were thoughts yesterday afternoon that this was either a dilution of their shareholding below 25%, and either they've given it to John and the daughter, or John, or they've managed to find some investment from somewhere. But it appears to be just a bit of paperwork, a bit of admin that's been done. If anyone within the chat's got any more financial expertise on it, then
just leave it there.
Before you move on to the next game, I have a question for both of you. Murphy's been through a bit of a roller coaster this season, looking for his chance. He's even played it, I believe, right back in certain phases. He's had a run in the team in the last few games. Based on what you've seen, if you had the opportunity, would you bring him back next season?
Go on, Fevs, you go first on that.
As a permanent signing, yes. I don't think we need to. I guess if we go up, I think there's different conversations depending whether we go up or stay down, isn't there? If we stay down, I wouldn't want to loan him. I think you might say actually we'll take him on loan if we're in the Premier League next year. I think that would be a sensible way of looking at it. That's my view.
My answer to the question, Dave, is yes, you bring him in, but then are you rotating him with Twine, or are you sort of saying him, Bird, or Twine? 3 players for one position.
It's a long season, though. You've got, especially if you're playing with 2 10s, and if you imagine Stokes is probably coming back next season as well, maybe 5 with Mehmeti is too many, but ultimately you're talking a guy that is showing what he can do right now, and we're essentially saying that he has the shirt here and now. If he continues this form going forward, I think if we did go up, I would definitely say yes. And I tend to agree with Feds. If we weren't up, I would say more Stokes. We're going to develop our own player rather than Earthy, because ultimately we won't get the long-term benefits from that.
No. And if you look at players that are youngsters that could come back and have some impact next season, and Stokes is the obvious one, who's tearing up trees at Cambridge. I know that's lower level in a not massively successful side. So you've got Stokes coming back. You've got. You've also got to put the question over whether Eamon Benarous, whether he ever makes the breakthrough, gets back to his fitness. You've got players, and then there's Murphy, the Irish lad that seems to be playing, seems to have overcome his injury problems. He's playing consistently for the under-21s. They're players that if we don't go up, if we don't go up, they're players that might feature next season, maybe to the exclusion of bringing Earthy back on loan, because he's probably not cheap from a wages point of view. And, is there a lone striker in that we could get from the Prem? We've said this before, another Tammy type, because I don't see Mayulu or Armstrong being the answer come next August. Let's look at the games this coming weekend. This midweek fixtures at the time we're recording this. Coventry are home to Portsmouth tonight, Wednesday night, that is. You'd expect them to get all 3 points in that particular game. We said it was a 4-horse race, us, West Brom, Coventry and Borough, but Millwall are coming up on the rails, and it's interesting that they won at Sheffield United on Tuesday night with a 1-0 victory there. What a clash that's going to be at the New Den on Saturday, Borough versus Millwall. Coventry are away at Hull, desperate for points, and West Brom are at home to Watford, who, if Millwall have got a chance still, then Watford would say they have. I didn't realise it until I read it that West Brom, that's 3 in a row they've lost after losing to us. Fevs, QPR away. If we play like we played for most of the game the other night, we've got to be coming away from there with at least a draw, and that's enough. But goodness me, if we got a win there, it really does take the pressure off the more difficult fixtures coming up. By that, I mean Leeds away on the penultimate weekend or Monday of the season, and Sunderland at home on Good Friday. What are your thoughts for Saturday?
Yeah, I think in the back of most City fans' minds is that Leeds game for some reason, or not for some reason, for good reason, I guess. I think there's also another pretty tricky game with Sunderland. And then I think there's a potentially tricky game with Luton before it, and then we've got a tricky game on Saturday. So I just think just go to QPR, worry about QPR. You're right, Dave. If we play anything like we've played the last 2 games and the games before Burnley, then we'll undoubtedly get something at QPR. But if we drop below, then you never know, do you? And I think that's the beauty of the Championship, is that any team on any given day is about who performs the best. Also, in most cases, whoever performs the best normally gets a result. You get some shocks as a low-scoring sport, but I think that we've shown the levels we can achieve against decent sides. QPR aren't as good as West Brom. They're not as good as Watford.
No. And nothing to play Norwich for. I mean, they're comfortably mid-table, aren't they? But
well, I think they're a bit lower, aren't they? Now I think they're still in with a bit of a. I was just going to try and
are they looking over their shoulder
quickly, but they've really dropped like a stone, haven't they? I think. Where are we? Table.
I've been to Loftus
Road.
Road.
4 points off of the relegation zone.
All right, so they have got something to play for. And Loftus Road, that little cramped stadium in
and I think that's the environment. I think we just need to try and take that.
Quite intimidating. And maybe if Sinclair Armstrong,
worry about these tight grounds, don't we?
If Sinclair Armstrong gets on, maybe a chance to prove everybody wrong. The club that let him go to us, although they get a princely fee for that. Dave, Tubby. We got to be confident of getting something on Saturday. Do you think they'll make any changes? I mean, Average Joe on the text feed has said maybe start Mehmeti versus QPR, but your thoughts? Excuse me.
It is a difficult call because ultimately you may be thinking after 2 very tough games, this is the moment where you want to freshen something up, but you've also got to combine that with the fact that that Bird and Murphy combo looks very, very good together. I'm not sure I would want to necessarily break that up, but to be honest, if all things being equal, I would go with the same side. But you know what data's like. If it's showing they're off it or they haven't quite, their whatever is not, their fitness data is not what it should be, then yes, there'll be changes. But that side deserves another go, in my opinion. Maybe Williams for McGuane is the main one, but personally, I would go with the same side.
All right.
I think McCrory looked quite tight in his hamstrings as he was getting subbed off yesterday as well. Hopefully, it's just a bit of cramping up as well. I would be surprised to see a few changes on Saturday, Dave, if I'm being honest. I think,
and the other thing, I guess, the fact that Tanner got back in, you could see Tanner come in at right wing back without going to a 4. You could have Tanner, Dickey, Viner, Dickey.
I don't think he'll move away
on that basis.
Yeah,
maybe with
I think he'd be taking a huge risk in disrupting
Metti in front.
No, you are right, Fevs. I agree with you. Actually, I think there will be some changes just because of the amount of games, and you need to keep fresh energy. I don't think you'll go with the same team.
I think we need to be cognizant of, the next week is Friday, Monday, so we've got 2 games in quick succession. And if you want to burn your players over those 2 games, then you're probably going to want to maybe underutilize them this Saturday. So someone like Naki Wells, you'd probably want him. You want him to start every game, but you could imagine us wanting to be a bit clever with him and just manage some of his minutes this Saturday.
At the end of the day, that's why you have a squad, right? And if Mehmet comes in, he's been pretty good.
I got 1 minute, Dave. Okay,
in the 1 minute crew.
Yeah. Oh, I'm wrapping it up now, guys. Okay, so. Will be Dave Tubby. Thanks for stepping in when my sound was all over the place. Dave Fevs, thanks for joining us. We'll be doing our review of QPR away at 6 o'clock on Saturday.
Well, Dave Fevs has
record audience for recording,
back again.
350 of you listening, maybe not all at the same time, which is pretty good. But thanks a lot for listening, and let's keep it